The copy thing just came through kind of by accident. After going through like the upbringing that I had and the IT job, I was just like, I'm super introverted. And so the idea of, I had coaches who were like, just cold call people and just door knock. And that just like, man, I had phone phobia. So the idea of me like jumping on the phone and selling and getting leads and cold calling was just like, it just wasn't going to work. From that, what I did do pretty well, because, that was a weak area of mine, but to compensate, I started writing. The biggest shift was just understanding that there's so much that I don't know. And I thought at that point, I thought what I don't know about business is, why do my clients, why they're so high maintenance? Why is Facebook so difficult? Why is this changing? Why is that changing? But I just wasn't answering the right question. There's not a lot of programs or courses out there that teach people how to become good cold email copywriters. So I was essentially teaching people from scratch. But when you do that, you've got like a 6-month lag time where you're paying someone like 100 grand a year. So it's like 50 grand that you're paying to someone to learn this stuff and not have any output.
Welcome to the Level Me podcast, where we rise to the level of those around us. And today we have Will Wang, who is currently just a beach bum. Will, how are you, mate?
Good, mate. Loving life, enjoying the beach.
Yeah, thanks for flying in and coming straight on the potty.
Oh, mate. For you, mate, anything.
Anything. I know, we were meant to do this last week, but I had an emergency fly out, so thanks for delaying.
Good.
Mate, you and I met at a snowboarding conference nearly a year and a half ago now. A bit better at a time like that. And we instantly hit it off. Like,
became like best mates.
Yeah, I know. I think it was the dinner the night before.
Yeah,
right? We were like sitting across from each other and they were like, do you know Steve Polisi? And I was like, yeah. I just hit it off from there. So small world, but a little bit of background around you. You ran a company called Growth Labs, which you've just recently sold. So I'm really keen to unpack that and how that looks. But you were pretty heavy into like the copywriting and cold emailing and everything else like that. Been lucky enough to see you speak on stage and like get the whole breakdown of how everything works under the hood. So keen to unpack that as well. But if we just roll back a little bit, scroll back on Will's Instagram, what would we see when you were growing up? Like where's the whole history of business come into play and everything else like that?
Yeah, I was just going to joke that you won't see anything on Instagram, so it's a bit private. But going back, I mean, business was like I'll go back further and set it up in terms of how I got into business and why. So grew up in Western Sydney, pretty rough neighborhood. Wasn't a great place to grow up. So I had a lot of issues around like money, all that kind of stuff. Immigrant parents. So the whole thing was like, keep your head, just on the radar, fly through, get good grades, get a good job, and just, live life that way. Didn't really happen for me because didn't get good grades. So I was more into the sports at school than I was into like the academics. And so it just, I knew I couldn't go down that path. But that being said, like I kind of partied my way through uni, almost failed out of uni because I failed the same subject 3 times.
What did you study?
I studied from environmental engineering.
Okay.
And so I wanted to do something for the environment. I wanted to be like, let me go save some trees. And then I remember the first advanced mathematics session that I walked into a lecture. And the lecturer was like, this is I, it's an imaginary number. I was like, dude, I don't get normal numbers. Like, this isn't going to work. I get imaginary numbers. So from that, it kept bouncing around. Went into sports education because my girlfriend, now wife, was, she became a primary school teacher. So I was like, look, education's pretty chill. Work with kids, like how hard could it be? Went into that, figured out probably don't have the patience to work with kids. And so I ended up in IT. Just because my dad was in IT, and at that point I was kind of monkeying around selling websites on the side. So I was, outsourcing pretty early on to people in Pakistan and India to build websites. And I was like, maybe I can use the contractors to do my uni assignments. So that was kind of how it came about. Ended up finishing in IT, but the skin of my teeth really. So that's another story. I mean, we can go back into that. But yeah, then because of the degree, I then went into professional IT for about 10 years.
Okay.
Yep. But just realized after 10 years, it's like looking at the people around me, they were unhappy, overweight, just not, some of them had gone through multiple marriages, and they just didn't like turning up to work, and they just didn't have a passion for life. And so I got to the point where 10 years in, I worked for big corporations, and, a couple of things triggered. My son was born, and I was flying Monday to Friday to Melbourne because I grew up in Sydney. I live in Sydney. The company I worked for, the very last company, was based in Melbourne.
Okay.
So every single Monday to Friday I was out there. My son's like a month old. And so a whole series of things happened. We can go into it if you want, but I just decided, look, I think enough is enough.
Yeah, let's go into it.
Yeah. I mean, it's not a huge story, but it's literally, I started this new company in November.
Okay.
And obviously Christmas rolls around and they were like, hey, our offices are shut. Can you do us a favor and just take a couple of weeks off without pay? I said, yeah, cool, no worries. My son just got born. So, hey, when I come back next year, I want to take some time off without pay and just hang out with my kid a bit more because I'm flying so much. They're like, yeah, all good. And so this was like a big Japanese company. And so come July, August the next year, I applied to take extra leave, didn't want to get paid, and it got shut down. It's like, no, you've taken so much leave already. You took 2 weeks over Christmas. You've got too much leave. We can't approve it. And so when that happened, I was like, well, hang on. You guys forced me to, almost. But now you're not replicating. Like, what's going on? Now, I'm giving so much of my time. I'm flying interstate. When I'm flying, every single day when I'm in Melbourne, there's nothing for me to do. So I'm just working like 16-hour days. The least you can do is let me take some time out without getting paid for it. Like, no, it's not going to happen. Went up the chain, down the chain, and I just got, they just came back and said no. So at that point, I was like, look, I already don't like my job. Like, I already hate sitting here looking at spreadsheets every single day. I want to spend more time with the kids, and I just want to get out. I'm like, I don't want to be in 10 years' time looking at the people ahead of me sitting where they're sitting, or in 20 years' time, and 30 years' time. Like, it's just not what I want to do in my life. And so I was questioning, like, what do I actually do? And I just wanted to have control and freedom. So that's when the whole entrepreneurship came about. And I tried everything under the sun. I tried like affiliate marketing, which was, pretty much of not a disaster, but it's like, I was a 20-something-year-old guy making 130 grand a year. I'm not going to go for and do affiliate marketing and replace my income in a month or two. And I really desperately wanted to get out. So
you're doing both at the same time. You're working and trying to figure out what else you're going to do for business.
Yeah. So I tried like drop shipping, affiliate marketing, buying stuff from Walmart, listing on Amazon, like all the kind of crazy stuff that you try. And it just wasn't really working. Like, I was making $20, $30, $40, but it was like, I can't replace an income that I was getting from corporate with this kind of thing. And so at that time I got pretty lucky that I ran across some great people and they were like, hey, why don't you try and, do this marketing thing? Because you've done some website stuff in the past. Why don't you try, websites, go back into that kind of field again? So I started through there, started doing some really, I'm a bad designer. Like, I can't design to save my life. So when I gave clients websites, they were like, this is really ugly, but I like what you've written on here. Like, you've written it really well. So that's kind of what pushed me into like doing copy. And then from that point on, like the business just grew and grew. When I first started, my goal was if I can make 10 grand a month, like I'm stoked. It's replaced my salary more or less, and I can work from home. But it just kind of took on a life of its own. And then over the years, it grew, and then all of a sudden we were like a 7-figure business with like 15 staff, and I was just like, wow. Holy shit. Like,
I'm here.
What is it? Yeah.
So the inception of Growth Labs wasn't just copy, it was everything.
Yeah.
Websites, copy, trying to do everything that you possibly could.
Dude, I tried to do SEO at one point. we offered Google Ads, web design, just everything, like literally anything that I can get paid for, I would jump into it.
Well, it's kind of funny you say that because I think you have to go through that process to figure out what your niche is or what you're actually going to make money from. Like in my experience, I remember like the core of my product stayed the same, but the way and who we sold it to changed so many times, and the pricing changed so many times as well. So I think, you kind of do have to go through that process of, I don't know, whatever you were reading or learning or listening to at the time, but all those things that have been coming up, right? Like SEO, websites, drop shipping, there's 1,001 things of that now, but you kind of go through that process of, well, what's actually going to stick and work? And how long did it take for you to actually find or niche down and go, well, copy is actually where we're going to land?
I think it took me a good 3.5 years.
Wow.
To really, the first 2 years was just like struggle street, like massive struggle street. We had a little bit of money saved up from the corporate job, and from when my wife was teaching, we had a bit of money saved up. We put all that into the business. We took out like another mortgage on the home to keep funding the business. And it was just like, we're at the point where I was saying to my wife, like, man, we've gone backwards 10 years financially. And I don't know if we've got another 2 months in us in terms of the business. I might have to start looking for work. So we kind of got to that point. It was, pretty dire. The copy thing just came through kind of by accident. So like after going through like the upbringing that I had and the IT job, I was just like, I'm super introverted. And so the idea of, I had coaches who were like, just cold call people and just door knock. And that just like, man, I had phone phobia, like to the point where on the phone, I would stutter and like a cold sweat running down my back still on the phone. Even my wife sometimes just be like, hey babe, I think you're in a public area. And just like, when you're on the phone, just text me. Like that's how bad it was. So the idea of me like jumping on the phone and selling and getting leads and cold calling was just like, it just wasn't going to work. So from that, what I did do pretty well, because, that was a weak area of mine, but to compensate, I started writing cold emails for myself to get the leads and to try and move the sales as much to, copy-based and email-based as possible. And we had a client that came through for Facebook ads, right? I reached out to him, sent some really good emails for Facebook ads, and Facebook was starting to get really choppy at the time. So 1 month it'll smash it, next month it'll just be like donuts. And so one day the client turned around and goes, hey man, these ads are kind of a little bit stressful. It's very up and down, but the email that you wrote to get me on board as a client was really, really good. We're in B2B. Do you reckon you can do this for us? So that kind of just pushed me into the cold email thing. Okay. And that was, just seeing the results from that, I just started geeking out about cold emails and how you structure the conversations. And long story short, that's kind of, from that point on where we kind of took the business.
How you landed. Well, it's funny. There's a couple of things in that to unpack, but I went through the same process with like sales because I was very introverted as well. Like I was a data scientist for 10 years and like, even though I worked for a big corporate, I was able to work from home and like, really went into my shell through that whole process. I was always an introvert as a kid and kind of knew that. But like, when I stepped out into business and had to learn the sales skill, it was such a change of mind. And I'm so glad I did because now I have the confidence to speak to people. Now I have confidence in what I'm delivering in my product and everything else like that. And it's actually a really important skill to develop. It's probably one of the most important skills to develop, I reckon, when you're starting a business. But it's hard as an introvert as well because it's not a place you want to be. It's not, you don't want to be in those awkward discussions. Or I was the same, I used to like scratch my neck like this while I was on a call. It's like such a tell. But it's a skill that you have to learn. And I think it's really cool that you kind of understood who Will was and went, well, I don't really love doing this. I know I've got to do it, but what's a format that I can deliver this in that's going to work well for me, but also suit my needs and what I want to deliver in terms of the clients. And obviously people saw value in what you were producing in the copy and went, well, actually there's a real skill in that. So that was the first client. And then is that when the light bulb went on and said, okay, well, I'm going to charge X amount of dollars to doing this. And I'm going to start to now do this to multiple clients?
Yeah, it was. So that was, that opened my mind to like, hey, people actually want this thing and it's actually more scalable and dependable. And we're not at the mercy of a Facebook or a Google. So that was the first client. And I just, from that point, I was like, well, actually, let me get the results for this client and see if it works for somebody else. And it did. And so that really, there's an idea that I kind of worked a lot on during the agency days of client stacking. So you have a client, you get a result, and then you stack on top of that and you get other clients who look like them or bigger and you can charge more money and you can kind of build that way. So that's, what we went down and we started to see some really good success, but I was still really bad at the operational side of things. Like with the pricing, I still didn't get right. I still struggled with sales and calls a little bit. I mean, at that point, I'd gone for 3 years of having to do sales calls. So, already my communication was a little bit better, had more confidence because I had proof that I could do something. But like the pricing and the operation was still terrible. And so from that point on though, is when I brought on my business coach, a guy by the name of James Tramko, and he really helped me to systemize and get the operations right. So at that point, I think 3 years into the business, we were doing about maybe a couple of hundred grand a year, 100 grand a year or whatever. And then when James came on board, it was like every year we doubled after that for like 3 years of, 4 years straight. It was just, epic growth.
How did you meet James?
I think I met James because I was complaining online. I was having a whinge online about business, about how hard it is. And a mate of mine who actually lives in the UK, so I've never met him in person, but he's like, hey, there's a guy who lives near you. I've listened to a lot of his podcasts. He's really good at operation stuff. Go talk to James. And he was part of James's online group. And so he referred me in. I had a chat to James, like, look, I've got nothing to lose. I mean, we were doing 20, 25 grand a month at that point. And I was like, if I don't have another 3 months in me, I'm going to burn this business down, or we've got to change it completely. But within like 2 months of working with James, it's just like my pricing had gone up. We had better clients. It just changed entirely. But yeah, it was through like a mutual mate, just by complaining on Facebook.
Doesn't sound like you will, come on. Yeah, that's a really interesting concept. So I think for me, like I've probably said this a few times, but I'm Dutch and we're quite tight with money. So the concept of me paying someone, and I'm a big fan of James and like Taki Moore and Dan Martell and like all that whole crew that's out there. And I think there's heaps of value in it. But when I see like, oh, am I going to pay this guy, let's say whatever, 5 grand a month or 10 grand a month, you know, it's a decent chunk of money. Am I really going to get the value and the return out of that? But just by hearing not only your story, but a fair few stories, like it just helps you completely get past any sort of mental roadblocks that you might be hitting. And it sounds like, you know, if you were doing a couple grand a year or whatever, a couple $100,000 a year or whatever it might be for the first 3 years, and did you feel like you kind of got stuck at this level? And the reason you got stuck is because you just didn't understand that operations process, and bringing someone in to help you mentor you through that process was really good.
Yeah, 100%. And mate, I'll joke about it, but like you're Dutch, I'm Asian, we're both tied up, so it's whatever, right? I think for me, the biggest shift was just understanding that there's so much that I don't know. And I thought, like, at that point, I thought, what I don't know about business is, you know, why do my clients, why they're so high maintenance? Why is Facebook so difficult? Why is this changing? Why is that changing? But I just wasn't answering the right question. So the question was just like, how are you setting up the business? Like, what is the one thing you can solve that takes care of all the flow-on effects? And so I just didn't even realize, or, you know, I just couldn't see that. And James came in and he said, look, you're doing a really good job, but you're charging $2.5 grand a month. Like, why are you not charging 6 grand, 7 grand a month? And so one of the things he first did was he referred me into one of his other clients who needed a lot of help with copywriting. And he said to me, look, they need a lot of copy help, but they're, you know, a very successful supplement business nationwide. If you can crush the copy for them, you're going to make them hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars.
Okay.
You cannot charge less than 12.5 grand for this copy. If you do that, I will not refer you to them and introduce you. I'm like, mate, I don't think they're going to pay me. Like, who would pay that? But sure, I'll do it and I'll just humor you. And I did it and then turned around like, oh, is that all? And they just paid it on the spot. And I was like, whoa, hang on. It wasn't fundamentally anything different than what I was doing for my smaller clients, but it was like, hang on. So I've just gone through and charged the same thing I've charged to a bigger company, but also I've just made them like, I think we ended up doing 600 grand in sales from that email copy. And I made them 600 grand, but I've been paid 12.5. Whereas for smaller clients, like I can do multiple variations. I'll only get paid like 3 grand, but they'll only go and make, you know, 6 grand or 10 grand because the size of the business and scale matters. So that kind of opened my mind, like, what game am I playing? You know, and it just really changed the way that I saw business. And it's like, well, instead of going and just making it about me and who I want to sell to, it's like, who needs help and what kind of scale can I help them with? Because if I can help a company make $1 million and just ask them for 10%, that's 100 grand. Versus like the other side, where it's kind of, you know, trying to squeeze blood from a stone, really.
How did that? Did you change your whole pricing structure after that? Like, is there a process that you did where you were like trying to understand or figure out what is the copy that you're making and what audience are they selling to? How big is it? What's the potential opportunity in terms of what revenue they could generate from it, and then price on that? Or how did you approach it after that?
Yeah, so we still kept to fairly standardized pricing, but I got better at selling based on the returns. So we started getting bigger and bigger clients. From that point, I think we were doing, you know, we were charging about 3.5 grand a month per client. Okay. So after that, I immediately raised the prices to 5.5 grand straight off the bat.
Yep.
And the level.
And did that cut out all of the like not crapper, but like smaller clients that you had?
Yeah. I mean, we didn't raise, we grandfathered most of our clients in because I didn't want to lose, you know, all of our clients. But like really quickly, I think there's less competition at the higher end as well. And sometimes just by virtue of charging high prices, people like, you must be better because you're charging more. And it's a different mindset, and the clients are, you know, they'll give you more time to work on their stuff, but because they give you more time, you've got more time to test and actually get the results. So like, it's just so much better at that kind of level. But we grandfathered in a whole bunch of clients. The ones that came through with me, they were great clients, stuck with me for years. And so I wanted to keep them on board. But yeah, we went pretty high up in terms of pricing. And then we hit a point where I was confident enough that we're actually really, really busy at that price point. And so after that, what I did was every new invoice, I just added 25% onto it. And I just saw how much we can push it up. And so by the time, I think the biggest retainer we ever got was about 25 grand a month. And then COVID hit and things got interesting. We actually grew a lot during COVID, but then we productized and, the 25 grand a month obviously took a lot of work. But then we kind of downscaled and just made it more productized. So I didn't have to be as involved with every single client.
Was there a process that you went through while you're increasing your invoices? Like, how was the internal shift? Did you feel like you gave much more focus to your newer clients rather than your grandfather clients? Or did you start to get more selective and picky with the new client that you would bring on? Like, how did that internally shift?
That's a great question. Yeah, that's a really good question, actually. I think my focus was always on existing clients because I just, I value the relationship. And for me, again, like I got good at sales, but naturally, if I don't have to do it, I'd rather not do the sales. So I'd rather just keep the relationship going through that. The new clients we got picky with once I started hiring a lot more because then the margins got squeezed and I had to be more careful. But by that time, some of the clients that had been with us for years, it was time to have a conversation. Like, we're doing so much work. We're doing about 8 grand worth of work for like 2, and it's just not sustainable. So I mean, it was kind of a mix. Like, it changed over time as well, and it kind of changed depending on who I had on staff, who we hired. We were still trying to figure things out to the very last day when we got things sold. When we sold the business. So it was just a learning process.
What do you think? One or two really key things that James implemented that changed your mindset or the business growth that really helped? Was there a few things?
Yeah, I think the most fundamental was the mindset shift around pricing. That was the biggest impact. James also has some amazing questions. So he, like, for example, when we were doing 7 figures and I was saying to him, let's push for 5 mil this year, let's push for 10 mil this year. He, like, this question will always stick with me. He turned around and he goes, okay, great, yeah, we can do that. But like, what's the reason? Like, what can you buy when your business is making 10 million that you can't buy now when your business is making 1 million? I was like, oh, that's a good, like, nothing really. It wasn't like, I was wanting for anything. It was just, and then he goes, well, okay, do you understand what the sacrifice is to get to the 10 mil? Are you willing to sacrifice to get to the 10 mil versus what you're doing now? And so for me, it was just taking a step outside and looking at the bigger picture was definitely, one more thing on top of the pricing. Pricing and just knowing my own value was like such a big part of it. The questions I asked myself and the people around me really evolved and got better as I worked with James a bit more, as he asked me more questions. And I think just, learning from James's life experience really helped me as well to see, what's the path, what's the journey? Like, James has got this amazing life. So for me, he was looking at that going, do I want this life or do I want more money, but way more, hustle and less time with the kids and all that kind of, so it kind of really helped me to balance out and see things from a very different perspective. And I think that just gave me a lot back as well. I think
that's one of the importance of a mentor is not only like helping you get where you want to go, but helping you understand where you actually want to go, like where is the destination? Because it's definitely something that I've kind of struggled and realized. Like, I surround myself with these very hungry individuals who run massive businesses and are always doing something more and looking for something more. And you look at them and inspire to them and go, wow, that's amazing. Like, I wish I was at that level. Yeah. But you also, like, I'll invite them over for dinner and half the time they'll be on WhatsApp making sure everything's good or, distracted with something or on an email or taking a phone call. And it's like, well, is it really worth that sacrifice of just constantly being on? Like, if you can't even switch off, it makes it tough. And you do have to like find that line or decide where you want to land and then work towards that rather than just hustle. How did you answer those questions when they came up? Did you make that decision of you would rather a little bit more lifestyle or you wanted to shoot for the billy?
I mean, I didn't have a good answer, which meant that wasn't an answer. It's like, I don't know why I want to do this and I'm not willing to sacrifice family stuff. So that in itself was a default answer. Like, I don't need to do this. So that was a really good realization. I think one of the reasons why I wanted to push a little bit more was because I had another coach who I really respect and, amazing dude, by the name of Mitch Harper, who's the co-founder of a company called Big Commerce. And they have gone public in the US, started from Australia, went to the US. He's not involved in day-to-day of the company. He hasn't been for a long time. But the company now does like 250 mil a year. And when he left as CEO, I think they were doing somewhere around 30 mil a year or something like that. So, they've gone public and all that kind of stuff. And I just looked at that and said, well, I really, really want, that because that's who I surrounded myself with and who I, but the context was that Mitch did that before like the kids and all of that. And it was very different. He set himself up, straight from high school, from uni, and he had this build-up period that was very different. So, talking to James was really good, and then talking to Mitch was really good because I realized I want a little bit more than just the lifestyle stuff, but I don't want to push to like a $150 million, $200 million company because it's not where I am in life or where I want to be in life. So it was nice to have the balance between two mentors.
Yeah, and it's good to have that kind of understand where you are in your life stage and then build your goals around that rather than, pre-kids, like I would have been hungry as anything and just would have gone hard. But now you realize the importance of family time and tucking them into bed and all that sort of stuff. It's not something you want to lose.
Exactly. And I just forget the next point. And I think it's also the business model as well. Having both coaches, like the marketing agency stuff is really easy to start, but really hard to scale. And that's something I didn't realize or wasn't enough of an entrepreneur to understand when I first got into it. And if I did, I don't know if I would have done it. So I'm glad I didn't know. But it was just, the idea of like, what is opportunity cost versus, what level of entrepreneur am I versus what is the opportunity vehicle I've got. So I felt like through growing the agency to where it was, I'd become such a better entrepreneur. I was at such a high level of marketer and entrepreneur than what the vehicle of the agency could do for me. And I realized that, I think I do have it in me to do like a 10 mil business or, 50 mil exit. Like, why not? Like, that's pretty exciting. I want to do it, but without sacrificing everything else. But the agency was never going to get me there. Like, that's a service business. You scale for people. When you train up good people, they leave. Labor costs are very expensive. The margins really shrink after you push through like 2 mil, for example. So that was just a really good realization. And, one of the things that James really helped me with was to see like the business vehicle of and business model.
Yeah, the model's important. When you say not scalable, I know you just touched on it then, but also is it essentially, well, client is paying X amount of dollars to come on board, but you need to pay then, someone to do the work for X amount of dollars, and then there's a little bit of a margin in between. Then you need laptops, phones, office space, all that sort of stuff, and the margin erodes and erodes and erodes. And so in terms of scalability, for every new client you bring on, you're going to need more and more staff, more and more overheads, and the margins get squeezed and squeezed and squeezed. Is that essentially where you're getting at?
Yeah, that, and also, most of the clients came on board because, they had heard me speaking or they heard me on a podcast and wanted me and my experience and expertise. But to bring a team member on board that has that same, like it's just impossible, right? Like, I did the marketing and strategies that I came up with because of life experiences. You can't really teach that to team members. They've got to go through and experiment and fail, themselves. And the good stuff are really expensive, but then like the best stuff who can replicate what I can do for clients, why would they work for me? I can go and get one or two other clients and get paid the same, right? So that's kind of the struggle that I had. It was more like the skills gap in terms of scaling. Everything else adds up. Like, by the time you get in the office and everybody's got a MacBook Pro and a comfy chair and, you've got, team lunches and team trips, like you don't see much of it. So when I say like we did 7 figures, that wasn't profit. Like I wasn't taking home 7 figures. We still had really good profit margins, but it was nowhere near the actual revenue. So at that point I was like, I just found it really hard scaling beyond that point in terms of both the skills and experiences. And clients coming in just wanting my time and me, just really hard to get away from that.
So you had a key person issue, really, like you were the face and everyone wanted you. How did you best try and address that? Did you have certain staff members that could do certain things that were of equal quality to what you could deliver, and then maybe you would be client facing and do the meetings and everything else like that, but they would be doing the grunt work behind the scenes? Like, how did you best balance that?
Oh man, I tried so much and failed so badly with hires. At one stage, I had an account manager, very expensive account manager, with the thinking that she could be the one that did all the client meetings, did all the client notes. Like she was good, but it just wasn't me. If that kind of makes sense. So I tried that path and it didn't work. And then I tried to get the copy done elsewhere, but it was really, really hard to find good copywriters who have a good enough margin for us to even make money. And the cold email, which is stuff that we did really well and what a lot of our clients use us for, there's not a lot of programs or courses out there that teach people how to become good cold email copywriters. So I was essentially teaching people from scratch. But when you do that, you've got like a 6-month lag time where you're paying someone like 100 grand a year. So it's like 50 grand that you're paying to someone to learn this stuff and not have any output. So that was pretty difficult as well. And hiring full-time didn't work. Towards the end, I did have a couple of good freelancers and contractors, like Maddie, for example, who was on here. I'd set the strategy, I'd think through and just talk through everything I saw for the clients and the angles and the hooks and how I wanted the structure, and Maddie could go and write it. But ultimately, it's really hard to find good people who can get the quality done.
Deliver for you. Out of a selfish note, like we're looking for like an account manager / BDM at the moment. And you say it wasn't you. So do you feel like the clients still wanted the connection with you rather than just talking to the account manager directly? Was the account manager good at outreach and trying to find new clients? What was kind of some of the biggest constraints that you found after getting them on board?
Yeah, I think the biggest constraints, and look, I would say this with the preface that your business is actually very different to mine. And I think you can find an account manager much more successful than I can, because we sold on strategy. We sold and executed based on strategy. So every client had their own strategy. Like they were all different, right? It wasn't a standardized product. Everything was so customized. And so at that point, it becomes really difficult because, for example, if a campaign's not working and the account manager's on the phone with a client, they've got the pressure coming through, but they might not necessarily, in our case, they might not necessarily understand the nuances on how to create a different strategy to test against that. So with our account managers, it was a mix of like really good marketing experience plus the communication side. And that's kind of hard to do, right? Kind of hard to find. Like there are people out there who are great like that, but they, like needle in a haystack. Whereas I think for your business, because the product is productized, like it's, they're not going to be able to go and create this whole new thing that's completely different. I think it becomes a lot easier because then it's like, you kind of know what they're going to bring up in terms of, hey, either this isn't working or it's a technical issue or it's around, how to onboard my clients more efficiently. But those are easy conversations to have. And those are things you can, technical skills are easy to train. So you can train your account manager with the technical side of the product. Whereas for me, it was like the strategic and the thinking side. And it's just so hard to train that.
Yeah, I can imagine. With the whole like paying people to learn, so you mentioned like if they're on a 6-figure salary, let's say, and then they're kind of learning for 6 months at, you're 50 grand out of pocket just to get them up to speed essentially. Was there anything that you did to improve that process? Like, did you have, one person start to document everything, or did you try and like create some videos and teachings and learnings and, process drive that? Or was it just always like a big clunky issue to onboard new people?
Yeah, so I'll kind of go into that just a bit more so people can get the context of it. So most of my team members were actually based in the Philippines. Okay. So in cold emails, there's 2 main sides to the business. One is like finding the list of contacts for people, and the second one's writing the emails. The list building and all of that, we were so good. Like my team in the Philippines are just weapons. Like they're just straight up, amazing stuff they were doing. So we were building these amazing lists, and we can onboard someone, and in 2 weeks they're just producing really good lists for us. So we had all the SOPs. We had video recordings of how it's done. Our team members train each other really well, so that was awesome. It was more like the strategy and the copy roles that we really struggled to teach, because copy is very like individualized, and every copywriter, as much as they try and avoid it, they do have their own style and personality. And with cold email, it's so like, it's a lot easier to write a super long form sales letter where it's like 10 pages. That's easy. You can follow a formula, you can follow templates, and you can take your time to explain the concept. But with cold emails, it really like, you've got 3 lines to get enough curiosity to get a response. So that kind of thinking is super hard to teach. So that's, we spend so much time teaching the strategic and the marketing copy side, especially with, cold emails. They have some kind of output, like you can kind of tell throughout the process, I think they'll be okay because they're thinking this way, but it's just hard until you get to the point where they're actually giving you output that's decent. You need to give them time to learn. So that's kind of the difficulty that we had.
Makes sense. For context, for people that are like haven't really done copy before or anything else like that, I remember when we went away, Will was talking about like some of the things and processes that he does. And my biggest takeaway was he's got 3 notebooks and they're all different colors. And the first notebook, he kind of just like sits there for an hour and just writes whatever he comes to his brain. Like even if he can't think of something, he's like, I can't think of something. I can't think of something. I can't think of something. And then after that half an hour or hour process, you go through and circle all the things that, stuck or were important, and you wrote them in your second book. And they were kind of like the big ideas or the things that were there. And I remember you saying then you'd go away for like a week or 2. You wouldn't do anything with them. You'd just have them there and leave them there. And then you would come back and revisit them. And then you'd have a final book. And in that final book, you would go, okay, well, if 2 or 3 weeks later, this idea or this concept or this thought process is like still really good, let's get it in there as like the final thing to go through. Yeah. So it sounds like, for all of the copy and the writing that you did, it was just such a lengthy and a big process to really get everything particularly right. And you're so right. Like it does take, you've only got 3 lines to really try and get someone along. And when anyone receives a cold email, as soon as even if there's images on there or there's it reads or, looks a particular way, it's almost like an instant delete. Yeah. So what are some of the core things that you've learned that either number one, get someone's attention, or number 2, is just good enough to allow them to keep reading, and number 3, is there a certain length to an email which is too big or too little, or what are some of the key things that you learned?
Yeah. Oh man. How much time have we got? I'll go into some key concepts that I think are important. One is the length of email doesn't really matter. It's I think there's a phrase from Benjamin Franklin. I didn't have time to write you a shorter letter, right? It's kind of that principle. You just give write what you need to get the point across. The second point that counteracts that is around curiosity. So most of the time when people write cold emails, they just give away too much. They try and get the sell on the cold email, but cold email isn't meant to be for selling. It's meant to be for relationship building. It's meant to be hey, are you even interested in what we're trying to do? So I think the best resources, and I'll come back to more principles, but the best resources to think about when learning cold email, and I'd get my team to do this. One is Jordan Belfort, the Wolf of Wall Street. The line he has when he goes, "Sell me this pen," that's cold email principle wrapped up in a nutshell. It's when he said, "Sell me this pen," and people are like, "Oh, this pen's blue, it's amazing." It's no, you walk up to go, "Hey, have you been looking for a pen for long?" Right? And people are like, "No, why would I buy a pen? I've got a laptop." All right, not my customer, I don't want to talk to you. But people are like, "Oh yeah, I've been looking for a pen, I just wanted to find this one." When they engage back and they qualify themselves, that's the purpose of a cold email, to get the hand raised, go, "Yep, this is interesting. I've been thinking about this particular problem." You're not telling them your life story or the problem so much. It's have you got this problem? We've got a unique way of solving it. Do you want some more information? Do you care enough to send me an email back? So that's kind of the core principle. There's new things that we're playing with at the moment that I'm experimenting for myself. And the new stuff is from Never Split the Difference.
Chris Voss?
Yeah, Chris Voss. And it's just psychology. It really is psychology. So the new things that we're playing with, it's can I get someone to say no to me on an email rather than saying yes? It's also how do we pull the perception of what we're doing so that they don't think it's cold. They're like, this person gets me, right? And they say, "Oh, that's it. This email nailed it." How do you know in an email what I'm thinking? That's it. So things like that is what I'm thinking through. And it's always changing and always evolving. Cold email has changed and evolved very much over the years. It used to be much easier to go with a longer email and give them a spiel. Nowadays, and we used to hide the sales message. So we used to do more of "Oh, can I share some ideas with you? Blah, blah, blah." Nowadays, one of the things that I've done with a lot of our clients is just straight up call it out, because people know what it is, right? So we straight up call it out. We've got this thing, it's got this result. I just want to throw my hat in the ring. Are you looking for this kind of solution? If so, would love to see if we can have an opportunity to talk to you about this. So it's kind of like an evolving thing, but keep it as short as possible. Don't keep some mystery behind it. Don't strip off everything on the first date. Just keep some mystery behind it. Bad analogy, but a lot of curiosity driven, and all you're trying to do is build a relationship, build a conversation. You're not going for the sale.
Yeah, interesting. I've heard a few different approaches. Like there's that concept of the 9-worded email or whatever it's called, where it's just like 5-worded email or something. You're like, are you still interested in this or something
that
like that?
Doesn't work in cold emails.
Doesn't work? Oh yeah, that's true. Well, you'd want them to be warm, because not warm, but like at least have heard of you before, because it's like a simple.
It's perfect for like leads that have come through before. But I've seen people try the 9-word email on cold emails, but the psychology is not there. Like there's no, so the 9-word email for people who are kind of listening is just, Dean Jackson made it famous. It's just a super, super simple email, no signature or anything. Are you still interested in getting help with this? And so I won't go too deep into like copy psychology or anything, but the word "still interested" is one of the more powerful words in that sentence, because it implies that we're interested before and you had some kind of dealing with them before. But if it's cold, you haven't even qualified if they have a need or interest in it. So they put "still," there's like a massive disconnect in how people perceive it. So it works really, really well for warm stuff, but for cold stuff, it just flops.
Just doesn't work. Yeah. And when you say cold email, is it literally just cold email? Is there any like flow-on effects or crossovers between like social media reach out and DMs and all that, like cold DMs and all that sort of stuff?
Yeah, we didn't get much into cold DMs.
Okay.
We did LinkedIn for a while for clients, but then LinkedIn kind of capped how many people you can connect with and message. But DMs, I think maybe it's the introvert in me, but I just find DMs very intrusive. Like you're on a social platform because you're, looking at cat and dog photos or catching up with your family and your friends and catching up with your mates. Like to get a DM is kind of not the right platform. Like it doesn't feel like the right platform for it. Whereas email for me felt natural because people are on emails for work. Like they're working, they're thinking about what they're doing. It's a very natural environment to have that. So I've never gone down that DM path a lot. It just didn't feel like it was the right play.
Yeah, makes sense. You're right. People, like when you check your emails, you're in that headspace of like, what's business driven, or what do I need to do today? And so you find something that comes in and deal with it then and there.
Yeah.
And so I remember when we were chatting, you were like, a year ago, you were kind of in that process of, well, the business isn't super scalable. Clients still want me. I've now built this team and got overhead and office space and everything else like that. And you were kind of like, not lost, but just reconsidering what you wanted to do with the business. And I think at one point in time, you were thinking about potentially doing like the course or some like online content and trying to switch that model to be more scalable. But as I mentioned at the start, you've just sold. So walk me through like the different stages you went through that. Why did that come about? Was it just the lack of scalability? And then what ultimately kind of like led you down the path of the sale?
Yeah, so I think over the years of grinding and struggling and hustling, I kind of have a better sense of where I'm at energy wise, and I just knew like I was tailing off energy wise, and it just like wasn't in a when I first started, as we were growing, I was pumped to jump out of bed and just grow. Like it was so exciting to see new clients, new revenue, all that kind of stuff, and by the time that, a little bit before we sold, I wanted to do other things. Like I wasn't excited to grow the business. Like it was still great seeing client results, but I just didn't have the same drive of like, let's get to 5 mil, let's get to 10. Like I just didn't feel it. That was kind of the main thing. I try to move away and go into courses and like coaching. And that was okay, but the agency took so much headspace that I couldn't do the other stuff properly. Like that was the biggest thing. There just was so much going on with like 15 team members, 15 clients we're managing, all the tax stuff, all the admin. I just didn't have the capacity to do the other stuff properly. So we'll go into a bit more, but now that I've sold, now the other stuff's actually growing really, really quickly. Like, I only just dipped my toe in it. I haven't really even announced it, and people are coming through saying, "Hey, can you coach me? Can you consult to us? Can you do all this stuff?" And we're taking it slow because obviously I've got that handover period. I want to make sure the company's going to do well, without me, with the new owners. But it's like just the headspace that you're in when you're not, constantly thinking about your clients' businesses. It's just night and day in terms of the growth. So I tried a bunch of stuff. I tried to, at one point I was going to buy another business or buy another website, use my team, had some partnerships come through. My team actually did marketing for the partnerships, but ultimately the focus always came back to agency because that's what paid the bills. And that it was a massive opportunity cost to stay there versus just getting out clean and doing something else.
So yeah, it was more of a I can't do anything more than what I'm doing right now because the overhead is just time-wise is just way too much.
Yeah.
Get out first and then you can focus on the other things, which I think is the smarter play. Like I think, I'm a big fan of the book, The One Thing. And I think, and like I juggle with it too. I'm always like, oh, there's this new app that I can build or like, there's this new thing that I can do. And it's like, well, your current business that you got is doing really well. If you just focus on that and continue to push and build that out, you're going to be much better, well off. But I'm the same. It's not like, I still love the business and I'm still excited to get new clients on board and I'm still like, it's still my baby in a way, but you do at some point get to that point where you're just like when I first started the business and I got my first client, like there's just nothing more exciting of like, oh, someone's going to pay me to do this thing. And then you get hungry and you want to build and build and build and build and build and build and build. But yeah, at some point you're just like, oh, do I have to do this? Do I have to do the same sales spiel again? Or like go on another webinar and talk about the same thing. Like there's definitely that point. And this is something I was going to ask you earlier as well. I feel like financially there's kind of that point as well. Like I know you said you were doing 7 figures. I know it wasn't all revenue, but there would have been a position for you where you're able to buy the $2 million home, you're able to buy the Tesla, you're able to buy, the different things or have things that you wanted in your life. Do you feel like firstly, what was that number for you in terms of like revenue or like profit margin or something like that? You don't have to give away too much, but like, was there a certain number for you that you loved? And then secondly, do you feel like that had an impact of not being as motivated and driven for the business because you had that money coming in?
I think I didn't lose motivation because the money was there, because it was comfortable. I think for me, it felt like I had conquered that game. I'd like finished that level of the game and I looked at the next level and I was like, no, I don't really feel it. Like it wasn't, we got pretty comfortable, I think in the 4th year of the business. So I had the business for 8 years. Year 4 was actually starting to get pretty comfortable for us. Year 5, I think, is when I had the Porsche and all that kind of stuff. And that was, sick. That was awesome. Like, don't get me wrong. Creature comforts are awesome. But yeah, it was just more like, I can do more with my time. I think that was the feeling. I think it was just energy more than, I don't think the comfort took away from the motivation. Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. Cool. And so selling a business, it's something I've never done. And there's lots that I've like read about and heard about, particularly in terms of like setting up the business for a sale, trying to do that from the start properly, what happens after a sale and like how you feel mentally and like how it impacts things. But when you decided that you did want to sell, what were some of the first kind of steps that you did?
Yeah, it was a bit of an accident in terms of how it sold. Because actually, going back to the last point that we had in terms of like numbers, I did want to say something. One of the things I did look at was, can I bring someone in, pay them a CEO salary, and not work on this business full time? I think for my business, it's again very difficult. Key man, clients coming in for me. I can bring a CEO in, but he won't know about the marketing side. I can bring a marketing person in, but they won't know about the business side. So fundamentally, it was a really hard business to scale. And the model was just like, the model is great for starting, again, not for scaling. With you, I mean, if you ever get to the point where like you want to do something else, I think you could actually bring like a CEO or a GM that runs most of it. Because it is just like, that's why I think a business is awesome. It's a productized SaaS, and those are like amazing businesses. So I think you could bring someone in. So, at that point, it's like, do you sacrifice a bit of the cash and get a GM, or do you sell it and just get out cleanly, right? And that's a good conversation. For me, I was at the point where I knew I had to change the business in some way over the next 12 months. And I just so happened to have met the CEO of Flipper, I think a couple of months ago, and we caught up, had some dinner. It was like, look, man, just get your site valued, get your business valued in Flipper. We've got this like agency division coming up. And I always thought like agencies are hard to sell, really, really hard to sell. No one's going to buy it. This key man risk. He just like, look, just let my team value it, we'll give you value, you don't have to do anything with it. And so we kind of went through that pretty slowly. But then one of his brokers saw the business like, oh, this is actually kind of cool. Can I push this for you? And I was like, look, I don't think we do anything, but sure, go for your life. And it just happened really quickly. So we got a few offers through. The first one that almost went through fell over because I don't think the person buying the business was the right person. So I ended up kind of walking away from the deal. But then as soon as that happened, like the day that I turned around to flip it and I said, hey, take it off the market, the actual buyers came through and, they were a really good fit. So that was kind of the process. Like I just went through, I knew I had to change. I knew I didn't have the energy. And I was going to change the business anyway, but I didn't think I could sell it. But just by accident, I listed it on Flipper, had a broker take it and run with it, and it just sold. So
legally, was there a lot of, because you mentioned like the first people weren't a big fit, but I've heard of like stories where like you're trying to like really get into the nitty gritty and like do the full due diligence, breakdown numbers, everything else like that. Was the first people you feel not the right fit because the due diligence process didn't go right, or was there like legal things or contract things that you needed to get up, or how like was there other steps that you needed to do before you put it on the market? Like how did all that look?
Yeah, so at the point that we sold, like the business, I wasn't doing that many hours in the business. I was doing about maybe 30 hours a week because the team was so amazing, right? I just had to come in, write some copy, do some sales. The reason why I think the first deal didn't go through well was because I felt the business owner or the potential business owners were very inexperienced. It would have been their first business that they did. They were a highly paid consultant, moved over to the UK, saved up some cash, came back, wanted to buy a business because they heard a YouTube video or whatever. Oh, you should buy businesses, that kind of rubbish. And it was just like the questions that they were asking, I just got the sense of like, I don't think they're going to run this well. I don't think they're going to do well by our clients or our team. I think she realized by the end of it, oh, actually, this is way more complicated. Like I've got in over my head. But at the time, we actually had a signed LOI. Like we were going through the process. We'd given, her access to the books, so she knew all the numbers. And then it was fairly far down the process. And yeah, it was just, I just realized, I don't think she's going to take the business where it needs to go. And I didn't want to give it to somebody who would let the clients down, who would let the team down and just destroy what I had built.
Yeah, okay. That makes sense. So you ended up selling. Were you happy with the multiple that, like, how did you firstly, how did they value the business?
Yeah.
And then how close were they, like, from the value to what the final price actually was?
So they were really great. Like the guys who bought the business, the reason why I went with them ultimately was because they had both run agencies themselves. They both still have agencies, and it was more like a strategic play where we can bring a service that they're not offering, the clients would want it, but also they also knew how to grow growth labs and take it to 5 or 10 mil. And so the multiple, I mean, not great. I'll be completely honest. Most agencies, small agencies, only get about 2 times multiple. And so we're pretty close to that. Like it's pretty standard. The reason why I liked the deal was because, most of the time when you buy an agency or a service business, they put an earnout where there's growth that's factored in, or it's like, oh, you've got to grow 50% to hit, to get paid the second 50% of this deal, right? And it's like, if you're not in control of the business, how can you guarantee or know that this is going to grow 50%? So you're ultimately not even selling for 2 times, you're selling for 1 time. The way these guys structured the deal was really good. Like it's pretty much baseline. So as long as the business is steady, stay the same, then I get the rest of the earnout. So I really like that. They value the experience I had in building the business and the relationships. So we negotiated a consulting fee for 6 to 12 months. Where I can stay on board. And so the way that we structured the deal was, I think very good for them, very good for me. The number, I mean, I think if I'd been in for another 12 months, I might have walked away and just burnt it to the ground. So to get anything for it was quite good, but I was still pretty happy. I think overall, like the numbers, it's not like life-changing money, but it's great money to just give me like a year or 18 months to rebuild and build something else.
Yeah.
So that's what it was.
Well, a lot of people talk about how they sell the business for a big lump sum and then all of a sudden they've got this nice cash in the bank, but then they don't have any cash flow. And it's kind of like now you feel like even though you got the big lump sum, you're still stressed because there's nothing coming in, but you're still spending. And so it's like this mental barrier. But it sounds like because you've been able to negotiate the consulting fee and kind of have like this handover period, which is really good. Yeah. But also you focused on, you know, the new types of business models with the courses and the coaching and everything else like that. It's not like this big shock. Yeah, you can take a year off if you want to, but you've still got that cash coming in from the consulting fee, plus you're starting to work on these other things as well. So have you had a big like, oh shit moment? Like, what have I done? Or do you feel really good about it? Are you happy with where you're at now? Are you going to take a year off and have a bit of a break? Or are you going to just go full send into the next thing?
Man, I'm day to day. Like some days I'm like, I wake up, I'm like, oh shit, what's going on? Like I'm back to employee mode, right? But some days like I wake up like, man, I'm so fucking glad I did that. Like that was one of the best decisions that I could have done. So really it does go day to day. Like I think it's funny because it's taken me a few weeks to wrap my head around the fact that, you know, I like, it's still fairly busy with the handover. So it's not like, you know, I'm just sitting around doing nothing. I'm still helping out the business, still doing handover. But it's like, I can kind of have more headspace. It's not, I don't have to worry about the salaries now. I don't have to worry about paying the rent on the office or all of that kind of stuff. So all of a sudden I've just got like all this mental space to really think about the next bit. And like the next bit's, you know, slowly ticking along quite nicely. I think I'm going to go straight into that because, I love doing business. You know, for me, the idea of like torture is sitting poolside in Fiji for like a month, doing nothing but drinking cocktails like that. You know, I can do that for 3 days, but then I want to be doing something, right? I've got that personality. So I want to jump straight back into it. You know, we've got a trip to Japan booked at the end of, Feb next year, which is kind of like a 6-month mark anyway. So that'll be like a good reset. And then I'll come back and, you know, just keep going on this other business. And, you know, the consulting and the coaching stuff's not where I'm going to end up. It's good for cash flow. Again, you know, I kind of looked at the bank statements the other day and I was like, oh man, I've got to account for that cash flow. And so, you know, I'm doing a speaking gig in Thailand in a few weeks. And it's probably the first time I've actually booked economy tickets for a while. So I'm like, oh man, I just really need to work harder and just get back in business class. Like, what the hell's going on? So it's kind of like stuff like that, you know, which is kind of silly and funny and first world problems. But yeah, I mean, it's like, it's nice having cash flow coming in.
Yeah, I remember speaking to you the other day and you said something which has really hit me since. You were like, yeah, it's really nice to kind of go back to a 9 to 5 where like 5 o'clock you just switch off and you're not like too worried or focused on the business. Yeah. And now like I have a great lifestyle, but I still have this guilty feeling of like, I should be working now, or like, you know, sometimes I'll jump into bed at 7 after I tuck my daughter in and I'm like, oh, like I should just do these emails, or I should code this thing, or I should check what the devs are doing, or, you know, all this sort of stuff. But it would be nice just to go, man, let's just put a 3 hours. Let's watch the Matrix series tonight or something like that. You know what I mean? And not feel guilty about it. So I guess that would be a cool feeling, like, especially after 8 years of like just running hard at this thing, to be able to just switch off a bit. Hey. Yeah.
Like my wife and kids are loving it. It's, you know, like, and I'm still like, it's hard to break the habit of just caring and just wanting to do right. So, you know, I'm still not at the point where at 5, I'm like, see us, like, like, you know, all that. Yeah. So I'm still doing like probably a little bit, you know, more just to make sure the team's okay and all that kind of stuff. But like by 6 p.m, literally there's not a worry in the world. Like I'm watching Minions with the kids, or, you know, watching a TV series with them. It's just nice. Like I think everybody's just really appreciating that time now. And I think it's just the next businesses that I build, I'll make sure that's the case. Like the consulting stuff's great for that. Like, you know, rather than having deliverables, it's just phone calls, but you're giving your experience. So everybody gets, you know, right. It's such a good business model because it's phone call. I'll give you the experience. You grow your business, but I don't have to do, you know, I don't owe you like an email sequence or anything like that. So that's going to be a great business model for that. But ultimately that's still going to be hourly based. And if you don't do the calls, you don't get paid. So I'm trying to get to the model where it's like, you know, I'm not sure what it looks like now, whether it's like selling courses or it's e-commerce, where you can turn off at 6 and know that things are generally going to be okay, you know, and not have that service debt. But also grow a business, like grow business on 10 million a year. So I'm still trying to figure out what that might look like. But it's nice just, at 6 p.m. and I'm done.
Have some time.
Yeah.
Did you walk through the whole process with the family and like just get their opinion on things? Like, was your wife happy, sad, all on board with the whole sale process, or how did it impact, other than obviously having a lot more time with them now, did it impact the family in any other way?
I think it's all been positives because I think with my wife, one of the things that was really lucky for us was that she didn't have to go back to work after having our kids. So she's always been like a stay-at-home mom, but she helps in the business. Like she did all the invoicing, did all the chasing, paid the teams, paid the salaries, signed the offers, like did all the paperwork on that stuff. So we pretty much haven't had a proper break for 8 years. Like even if we're on holidays, I'm still writing copy, I'm still taking client calls. So for her, like I think she could kind of tell I was getting to the end of that journey where I just didn't have the energy to push again. So she was already saying to me like, hey, how can you change the business? How can you get out? Can you think about other ways of doing this? So she was actually pretty encouraging of actually pivoting. So when the sale came through, like she was over the moon. It took me a while to process. I'm like, business is worth way more than that. Like the multiples don't line up. I could probably go and get, double somewhere else and all of that. But it was just, she calmed me down. She said, think about the deal in the whole grand scheme of things, like the structure of the deal, the mental headspace you're going to have. Like numbers are probably not what you're looking for, but it's never going to be what you're looking for. So she was really good with that. Like she actually pulled me into the idea of, hey, I think this is the right decision.
Are you happy with the decision now?
Yeah, man. over the moon.
Would change it?
No, I think it was such a, I think, I've been very, very lucky in terms of my entrepreneurial journey. Like there's just been moments where like, didn't know what I was doing, just made a decision and it just worked out. And I think this is one of those decisions. Like obviously we're still in the transition period with the agency, but the guys that have bought it, like they care about the business, they care about the team, they like the clients, and I think they're going to do a good job. But for me, it just felt like a weight dropped off my shoulders. Like the second we signed, the second the money hit the account and they started switching everything over to their corporate credit cards and the team were getting paid through their bank accounts. It was like, man, I just didn't realize how much weight I was actually carrying. So every day now I wake up, I'm like, oh man, I've got 4 months to Japan, sweet. And then, we're thinking about like getting the puppy now and that kind of stuff that I couldn't do before because it's just too stressful. So yeah, it's good. And, every morning now I can go for a walk rather than having to wake up, smash a coffee, get into work. So it's just been night and day. Like the mental aspect of it has just been unreal.
Yeah, nice. I love it. Well done, mate.
Thanks, mate.
Super stoked for you.
Yeah, no, it's fun.
Well, thanks for jumping on the potty today, mate. It's been super insightful. We learned a little bit about copy and the sale of the process of a sale, which is awesome, and I love to hear it. But I'm excited to see what's next, mate.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
Any hints of what's next?
Oh, and I think, I'll talk about it. This consulting coaching thing has taken off faster than I thought. The point where I'm actually pumping the brakes a little bit. Okay. So that I think would do really well over the next little bit. I think, the value in selling the business actually is more in the story and the street cred. I'll probably get more from the street cred of selling the business than I will from the actual money of that, if that makes sense. Because now I've gone through the process and I can help others. So that's been awesome. I might buy an e-commerce business. We've got a mutual friend, Ben, who's just like amazing at, the e-com stuff. So Ben is like life goals in the business. So I want to learn that. Like I'm just getting back into the learning again, just having fun again. So I don't know. I'm learning like mentalism now, like learning magic stuff and persuasion. So that haven't had time to learn for a while. So I'll do that. See if I can build a course out of that. E-com business definitely be something that I'm keen to explore. I'll do a course on agency stuff. Lead gen stuff, probably do a course on it as well. And then, I might partner with a couple other people to do courses online or sell other offers and, just play for the first time in a while.
Nice. It's going to be interesting to watch because you're going to go through that process again of like figuring out what sticks. Like, how when you first started, you're drop shipping this, and this, but you actually have done a business before. You actually know what model that you want to pursue now, and all the mistakes that you made on your first business, you can now, skip on the second one. So I'm super excited to see what, Willie produces, mate.
Thanks, mate. Yeah, we'll see. I might be back in 2 years' time going, oh shit, that was the worst decision ever. Like, why do they sell this amazing business? Now I'm on the streets. And
no, I think, I think that's something that I not worry about, but I do think about a lot is like, oh, if I lost everything, if I lost the business, like, am I going to lose my lifestyle? Am I going to lose this? Am I going to lose that? And I get not anxious about it, but worried about it. But then I sit myself down and I just go, hey, like there's so much that you've learned and there's so many skills that you've developed. And, you know, there's so many mistakes that you've made that you can not reproduce. Like, you know, if I was to start from a blank canvas again, like I could probably do things 2, 3, 4, 5 times as fast and not make those mistakes and know what model to pick and scale and build it that way. So I think, you know, having the skill sets, let alone like worst case scenario, I mean, you might have signed a non-compete, which is fine. But like worst case scenario, if you had to do, you know, copywriting again, I'm sure you'd be able to find stuff, you know?
Yeah, exactly. And I think like I was really worried about that too. Like it was my main point of worry. Like what if this is, you know, what if I can't build something as good as this in future? But I think it's like how's it even possible? Because you've done it once, you know, and as long as, you know, and you've done it consistently as well over the course of many years. So it's not like you fluked it. It's not like you just hit on like fidget spinners and, you know, it's fad and it's gone, right? So you've got the skills, you're a completely different person through building the business. But I mean, it's always like, it was top of mind for me, right? And I think for me, what happened was as soon as I was catching up with some mates, you know, letting them know privately, hey, I sold it. And one of them turned around and goes, oh, you know, I've been wanting to get you a consulting for years, but you've always been too busy. How much do you want? Just blank check, just consult me. And so when that happened, I'm like, okay, I think I'll be all right. Like if this is the reaction people have got to it, right? And it's like, I think I'll be okay. But it's like, but every day it's just kind of improving itself. Like, well, actually I've got this track record. I've done this thing. And so now the challenge for me, like not challenge, but like the excitement as well. It took me like 4.5 years to get to 7 figures last time. Can I do it in the next business in like a year? So it's actually like having that. But yeah, I mean, it's you know, as I was saying, it's a daily struggle. It's like sometimes I wake up, I feel on top of the world and like, hey, let's go create like an 8-figure business. Next morning I wake up and like, oh, what have I done? Like, holy shit. But it's, you know, every day is getting better, I would say.
I think, you know, one of the best things about that reset is like, you're going to have your back against the wall again. And I think just having that drive and hunger to go, okay, I can do this. I've proven that I've done it and I've gone through a sale. Like you know, it's any entrepreneur's dream is to sell the business at some point in time. You know, what's the new goal? It's not like you don't want to be the Billy, but you know that you can go from 0 to 7 figures in 4 years. Like, why can't you do it in 2? And like, that's the new goal, which I think is really cool.
Yeah. And it's just like, I think it's just, the way I want to build the next, you know, like, yeah, I've got the goal of like, you know, doing 10 mil in the next business. But also the way I want to do it's a little bit different as well. Because the way that we've built, like by the time that, you know, the business sold, it took us a week or 2 weeks to create a funnel and to test things. Whereas we, you know, at the very beginning, we had such an edge where I could just throw up a funnel in like a day and just test, spend like a couple $100 and just be like, oh, this is going to go to 7 figures easily. So now I'm kind of back in that mode with, you know, more skills, more resources, more money that I can use on testing. So it's like, yeah, I think the challenge is it's just the fun of it too. It's not like the number itself, great, exciting, but it's more like, can I do it rather than, oh, you know, I just want like $1 million. Because $1 million, you know, having made decent money for the agency, I know now like $1 million a year, like it's great, but it doesn't, like I'm not going to change my lifestyle fundamentally for that. I don't want to drive in a flashy car and have everybody looking at me like, you know, like there's nothing materialistic that I want that I don't have at the moment. And I still want to keep life simple. It's more the challenge of like, can I do this? It's just, you know, just like, it's kind of like playing a video game for me now, right? Like, hey, let's kind of beat this level. So I think that's how I'm going to build the next one. But you know, some days I wake up and I'm like, man, what did I do? So we'll see. It's all part of it. We'll have to get you back in a year or two and see how your mental health is and how it's all going and where you're at. But, yeah, I think it's really good, and I love the whole thought process of the game. It's like, and you even said it before, like you got to a certain level and you like saw the next level, like, no, I don't actually need to do that. Like, I've beaten this boss, and you know, you just want to like, I don't know, beat the same boss, but beat it faster, beat it quicker, and understand it because I'm the same. Like, there's a certain level for me where I was like, you know, I just want a Tesla. Like, if anyone was going to ask me what my dream car would be a Tesla. Like, you serious? Dude, you can have mine. I do not.
I know you hate your Tesla, but I like mine. And so, like, for me, it's not like, oh, I don't really want a Lambo or like a, you know, really expensive. I'm the same. Like, I don't really want to be looked at while I'm driving. I'd rather just go from A to B, be unnoticed. And so you kind of find that level for yourself and go, okay, well, this is where I want to be. And then it becomes the game of like, not you doing it for you, but you're just doing to see how you can go. And I think that is a whole lot more fun than like just trying to be better or drive for more or like be materialistic. So yeah, it's a good philosophy.
Thanks, man.
Mate, thanks for coming on.
Mate, thanks for having me.
You've been a legend.
Oh, man, we always have like the best chats, hey?
I know, it's good. And I just love to like, it's good that I hadn't heard the story of the sale, because I think that'll reflect in the conversation, and hopefully heaps of people got value out of it like I did.
Yeah, I hope so.
Cool, man. Thanks for coming on.
Awesome. Thanks, Rob.
Thanks, man. Cheers.